this, that when he'd been there in Capernaum for several days, it was heard that he was home. Luke 5:17 then adds this little piece, same story. It came about one day that as he was teaching in Capernaum, that there were some Pharisees and teachers of the law sitting there doing what they did, critiquing him, trying to figure out if he would make a mistake so they could trap him. These Pharisees who had come from every village of Galilee and Judea and from Jerusalem. And the power of the Lord was present this day for him to heal. Mark chapter 2, verse 2. Again, same story, different piece of the story. Indicates that there were many gathered together in this house, so that there was no longer room, even near the door. And he was speaking to the word to them. And behold, Luke 5:18 says, some men were carrying on a bed a man who was paralyzed, couldn't move, couldn't get there by himself. And they were trying to bring him in, to set him down in front of Jesus. But not finding any way to do that because of the crowd, they went up on the roof and let him down through the tiles with his stretcher right in the center in front of Jesus. And seeing their faith, he said to the paralytic, friend, your sins are forgiven you. This is weird if you have a kind of a formula for faith and how faith brings healing. It wasn't the guy's faith on the cot that brought the healing. He saw their faith, the guys who brought them, and he said to the paralytic, friend, your sins are forgiven you. And in Matthew 9, verse 2, he says that same thing this way. I just like what he adds. He looks at this guy who had to be terrified. I mean, picture being, dropped through the roof. Are they going to drop me? What's going to happen? In the middle of a crowd, are they going to welcome me? And he says, take courage, my son. It's okay to be here. Your sins are forgiven. Take note of something here important. I think you've probably noticed it. He's about to heal him physically, and we'll read that in a moment out of Luke chapter 2. Well, he will rise, take up his bed, and walk. But before he heals him physically, he heals him spiritually. Your sins are forgiven you, which means, among other things, something I've been saying here. There's more than one way to be sick and need healing. Let your mind go with that. You can be physically sick, obviously, but you can also be sin sick, heart sick. You can have a sickness in your soul. Quick question. Which is worse? Which is worse? Which is harder to heal? Which would require more faith? Which would you have more faith for? Would you have more faith that God could heal your cancer, or that God could heal your marriage? Which feels more impossible to you? Which one's worse? Well, yeah, in some ways it depends on, I don't know if you're like me, but if I'm honest, which one's worse? It depends on what you have. Because it occurs to me that if what I'm waking up with every morning is this death sentence in my body of cancer, that's what feels impossible. But if what I'm waking up every morning with is this sense of not just a death sentence, but something's already died in my marriage, that's the thing that feels impossible. And I would probably find more faith to pray for someone to heal cancer than I have faith that God could heal my marriage, or something like that. One Greek word for sickness, interesting, again, many Greek words for all these things, is the Greek word astheneo, and its root, it simply means to be weak or feeble. This isn't like a death thing. This is just to be sick, to be feeble. Romans 4:19, it says Abraham was astheneo. He was sick. He was weak in faith. So it was his faith that was astheneo, that was weak, feeble, sick. So at this time in his life, Romans 4, verse 19, his faith needed somehow to be healed, to be touched by God and brought back alive. The point I'm trying to make here is this at the beginning, that there's more than one way to be sick, and there's more than one way to need healing. The first thing Jesus heals on this guy is his heart. Son, take courage. Your sins are forgiven. Back to the text, Luke 5:21 finishes it off this way. And the scribes and the Pharisees began reasoning to themselves, saying, who is this guy I think he is? He speaks blasphemies. Who can forgive sins but God? But Jesus, aware of their reasonings, answered and said to them, why are you thinking like this? Why are you reasoning in your hearts like this? Let me ask you a question. Which is easier to say, your sins have been forgiven, or to say, rise, take up your bed and walk. And I love this. He goes, but in order that you may know that the Son of Man has authority on earth to do the thing you cannot see, the healing of a human heart, that he has authority on earth to forgive sins, he said to the paralytic, I say, rise, take up your stretcher, and go home. And at once he rose up before them and took up what he had been lying on and went home glorifying God. And they were all seized with astonishment, began glorifying God, and they were filled with fear, awe, reverence, saying, we have seen remarkable things today. Actually, I want to do two stories of Jesus healing a paralytic. This is the first one. Another one's going to come with a twist. Around this story, I want us to examine three things. First of all, I want to look at the plight of the paralytic, and I really want to get into what his condition was, and I think in ways that we may not even know, we may be able to identify the faith of his four friends, and then the response of Jesus to all of that. Let's look first of all in this first story of Jesus healing a paralytic, at this particular paralytic's plight. Paralysis, as most of you know, involves a loss of motor function. No big revelation. They're an inability to move. There are varying degrees of severity from partial paralysis to complete. Some people can't move at all. I mean, you've maybe seen people like that, and your heart goes out to them, which prompts me to say this: just like there's more than one way to be sick and there's more than one way to need healing, there's also, as I said a few moments ago, more than one way to be paralyzed. You can be paralyzed physically, and it's horrible, but you can be paralyzed emotionally, spiritually, relationally, with fear. You can be paralyzed. Some, maybe, in this room are paralyzed with fear, anxiety. Can't see it on your face. You wouldn't know it by looking at you. So much so is this paralysis affecting you that you can't hardly move. Loss of function in life, and like physical paralysis, just like physical paralysis, there's a varying degree of severity when it comes to emotional and spiritual kinds of paralysis, from partial to complete. See, some people can't move at all emotionally, spiritually. They are absolutely stuck relationally. Causes of paralysis in Jesus' day, in many ways, were the same as today, with a few little twists here and there. Sometimes people became paralyzed by accident, just like today. Somebody falls off a ladder, breaks their neck, falls funny, they're paralyzed. They fall off a horse. Some injury to his neck or spine. Accidents, car accidents happen in our day. They obviously didn't then, but then they would maybe fall off a horse. It wasn't his fault. I want you to dial into that. In this kind of accident, if you fall off a ladder, you fall off a horse, you make a mistake. You walk funny, you fall funny, and something happens. Almost a sense when you fall off a ladder or a horse or it's like this sense of bad luck. Now, we know as Christians like to talk about bad luck, but that's what it feels like. And you come up feeling like, why me? Because if you fell off a ladder, broke your neck, and now you're paralyzed, one of the things that's got to dawn on you is this: lots of people fall off ladders and don't get paralyzed. But I did. See, lots of people grow up in dysfunctional homes, in really difficult situations, and they don't get paralyzed. But I did. Sometimes in Jesus' day, as in our day, paralysis was caused by a birth defect. Cerebral palsy, it'd be an example of that, causing paralysis. It's not your fault. It came to you. It's just like the cards you were dealt.